Time is 12 minutes past 9. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder. You don't have to say anything but obey how many defence. Don't mention one question, something for the court.
What do you mean I'm
anything you do say no given evidence.
What do you mean I'm in suspicion?
Right, just stay sat there.
What do you mean I'm in...
In the seaside town of Bournemouth, a terrible discovery shocked the community. Among the calm waves and beautiful views, the dismembered body of a man was found scattered around. The body parts were cut poorly, showing that whoever did this had no skill. As the investigation continued, police arrested a local couple, but they both insisted they were not involved in the murder. However, they were secretly recorded in the police van, and one man could be heard saying, "Kill, decapitate and eat the fuckers." I'd do it again and again and again. Later, police would find out that what they did with the remains was just as horrible as the murder itself. This case was shocking and cruel. The three people involved had difficult lives, and many others live like this too. What happened was something that could have been avoided, but it turned into something desperate and brutal. Before we go further, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. The dismembered body was later identified as 49-year-old Simon Shotton, a man who had faced many troubles in his life. Simon never found a stable job. Instead, he worked in different roles, including agency jobs, warehouse work, and even at a fairground. Even though he struggled to keep a steady job, family was very important to him. He loved his sons and his mother and tried hard to stay in touch with them no matter what. Unfortunately, Simon struggled with serious drug and alcohol addictions, which led to a chaotic life on the streets. His son Wesley, who was 19 when Simon was killed, always spoke well of his father. He said that even though Simon wasn't always around, their time together was special. Simon loved motorsport and tried to protect his family from his problems. Driven by his love for them, he tried many times to overcome his addictions. During the investigation into Simon's death, people described him as kind and caring. However, despite his efforts to improve his life, Simon's addictions pushed him into crime to pay for his habits. He got into debt with drug dealers and found himself in a bad place, unemployed and broke. Eventually, Simon started acting as a mule, moving drugs across county lines. This job only paid him in the very substances he was trying to escape, making it even harder for him to leave that life behind. Simon was caught working as a mule and was sent to Norwich prison. When he was released in September 2022, the probation services moved him to Dorset in the southwest, trying to keep him away from his drug debts and the dangers that could lead him back to crime. At first, Simon lived on the streets, but he soon found a temporary shelter in a rundown hotel. Sadly, despite this new beginning, he relapsed and fell back into his old ways, working as a mule again. He would spend 12 hours a day running drugs and dealing on the streets, with substances as his only payment. Simon kept his new job a secret from the probation services, knowing they would send him back to prison if they found out. His health was getting worse. He was tired from the long hours, always in pain, and suffering from COPD, which made it hard for him to use his right arm. By August 2023, he was kicked out of the hotel, and he had to ask a couple he knew from his drug dealings, Benjamin Atkins, 49, and Debbie Pereira, 39, for help. They lived together in a flat rented by Debbie. All three of them struggled with serious drug and alcohol problems, and they formed a troubled arrangement. Simon was allowed to sleep in a tent in their garden in exchange for PS40 worth of drugs each day. As part of the deal, he had to leave the flat during the day, but he could use the shower and bathroom at night and sometimes sleep on the sofa. This living situation was unstable, with three lives tangled in chaos and addiction under one small roof, creating a dangerous mix that could only end in tragedy. Within 2 weeks, Simon would be brutally murdered. Like Simon, both Debbie and Ben had difficult pasts. Adopted by her aunt, Debbie grew up feeling unloved and overlooked by her cousins, who seemed to get all the love. Her stepfather was abusive, and his friends also hurt her. This unhealthy pattern continued into adulthood, where Debbie found herself in many toxic relationships that left her both physically and emotionally scarred. At 29, a partner introduced her to a brown substance, which quickly led her into addiction. Although she had 2 children, now 19 and 16, she rarely saw them, and their relationship was strained. Debbie managed to get sober for a time, but she relapsed when her ex-boyfriend, Benjamin Atkins, came back into her life. The two quickly fell back into addiction. Ben's background was also filled with violence. His stepfather regularly beat him, and during the rave scene of the 90s, he turned to hard drugs, leading him into a life of addiction and crime. After the death of his grandmother, Ben tried to change his life. He trained as a carpenter and began to live well with a woman. But when that relationship ended while he was in Bristol, his life fell apart. He then reached out to his old flame, Debbie, and soon moved in with her in Bournemouth. Like Debbie, Ben also had children, but rarely saw them. At first, the living arrangement seemed to work. Simon stayed in the garden at night and paid them with drugs. Everyone appeared to benefit, but soon things took a turn for the worse. Unsatisfied with just the drugs, Ben started borrowing money from Simon without paying it back. To keep the peace, Debbie ended up paying Simon instead. There was also a struggle for control among the three. Ben was often abusive to Debbie, which upset Simon. While Debbie sought sympathy from Simon, she still felt attached to Ben, using Simon for emotional support. Unhappy with just PS40 worth of drugs a day, Ben began to blackmail Simon. Ben demanded more drugs and made sure Debbie didn't find out about it. He warned Simon that if he didn't give him what he wanted, he would tell the parole officers about Simon's work as a mule. Both men knew that would mean Simon going back to prison. This cycle of manipulation and abuse grew worse. On the night of August 18th, Simon texted his friend Donna, telling her he felt unsafe in the flat and needed a new place to stay. He also mentioned the blackmail. That evening, all three of them were high on drugs, and Ben and Debbie wanted more but had no money. So they came up with a plan. Debbie would distract Simon while Ben went to steal his money. The plan worked. At 4:30 a.m., Ben and Debbie went out to get more drugs. Simon quickly realized he had been robbed and became furious. When Ben and Debbie returned home around 7 a.m., Simon confronted them, but Ben just laughed it off. He and Debbie went into their bedroom and used the drugs themselves. Meanwhile, Simon was anxiously waiting for his ride to work. He sent a text to ask his driver to come earlier because he felt unsafe in the flat. He sensed that something was about to happen. In his anger, Simon cut the TV cables and went into the utility room to wait. What happened next in the utility room remains unclear, except for Ben's claim that he acted in self-defense. Some believe Simon might have grabbed the same knife he used to cut the TV cables to protect himself from Ben, but this is just speculation. The physical evidence told a shocking story. Blood from both men was splattered on the walls and ceiling, and both had defensive wounds on their hands, showing that a violent struggle had taken place. The confrontation escalated quickly. Ben overpowered Simon, and once he had the knife, he began to swing it wildly. Simon suffered multiple stab wounds on his arms and hands as he tried to defend himself, but eventually, Ben managed to stab him in the chest several times, causing immense pain. Simon turned to protect himself, but Ben continued to stab him in the back and shoulders with deep, forceful strikes. In a fit of rage, Ben did not stop there. After Simon collapsed to the floor, Ben kept attacking him. Sitting on Simon's chest, Ben grabbed a large speaker and smashed it into Simon's skull repeatedly until there was no sign of life left in him. In a gruesome final act, once Simon appeared dead, Ben gouged out one of Simon's eyes with his thumb. Debbie, who had been hiding in the bedroom during the murder, only came out when the flat was silent. When she entered the utility room, she found Ben sitting on Simon's lifeless body. The scene was horrific, made worse when Ben looked at Debbie and said, "He's pissed himself." Neither Ben nor Debbie thought to call for an ambulance. They left Simon for dead. Instead, they took Simon's pipe and smoked the remaining drugs inside it. After a few hours of being high in the living room, with Simon's lifeless body still in the utility room, the couple decided they needed more drugs. Driven by desperation and addiction, they searched through Simon's things, taking the little money he had left. They even pawned Simon's bike and phone.
Babe, where's the phone?
Where you sold the other phone?
Yeah, Debbie Clara.
Can you just spell your surname?
R-E-I-R-A.
Debbie unlocked the phone by figuring out Simon's PIN code and registered it in her name to pawn it. They returned to the flat and got high again until the next day. Only then, in the harsh light of day, did they realize they had to deal with Simon's body, which lay untouched after the attack in the utility room. Ben dragged Simon's body into the garden and covered it up. Then, the couple went out to buy cleaning supplies and a hacksaw, all of which they stole. Debbie, who had OCD, immediately started cleaning the flat thoroughly. Her cleaning efforts were very different from Ben's. He simply painted over the bloodstains on the walls with magnolia paint he borrowed from a neighbor, trying to hide the evidence of their crime. Over the next few days, Debbie continued her detailed cleaning, while Ben took on a much darker task. He found a book on anatomy to help him as he started the gruesome process of dismembering Simon's body. Waiting until nightfall, he gruesomely sawed off Simon's head, then his legs, and finally his arms. Ben thought he could get rid of the evidence by burning it. Ben started a fire in the backyard, throwing in Simon's clothes and his head. However, the burning flesh gave off a horrible smell that quickly caught the neighbors' attention. The awful stench was like nothing they had ever smelled before, making them horrified and suspicious. Ben convinced them that the smell was just from a dead fox he found in his garden, and that he was simply burning the remains. For 2 days he tried in vain to burn Simon's head, using different accelerants to make the fire hotter, but it was never enough to fully consume the remains. Now, Ben had to come up with a new plan to get rid of the body. On a rainy day in Bournemouth, Dana Burton was handing out flyers on the seafront when she took shelter under a tree. As she stood there, a terrible smell caught her attention, and she noticed a suspicious package nearby. Her curiosity grew, but as the rain stopped, she continued handing out flyers, though the package lingered on her mind. Returning to the tree shortly after, she was horrified to find that the package had slightly opened due to the rain and contained what looked like a human foot. Panicking, she immediately called the police. Officers arrived and searched the area, following a zigzag path that led to the beach, where they found another human leg. This grim discovery prompted authorities to conduct an extensive search of the surrounding areas. 6 days later, in Boscombe Chene Gardens, a police officer, led by a horrible smell, found a black suitcase containing a headless torso. The authorities were able to identify the remains as those of Simon Shotton. Further investigation led to a major breakthrough when detectives traced the sale of Simon's phone to a local pawn shop. This pointed the finger at Ben and Debbie as the main suspects, since they were the ones who sold the items. Authorities went to their flat to arrest the couple. Officers found a crucial piece of evidence when they discovered Simon's severed arms inside 2 trash bags in the garden. Both were arrested and placed in the back of a police van. Inside the van, a hidden microphone recorded their conversation. "Do you regret anything?" Debbie asked Ben. He replied, "I'll look him straight in the eye and say, yeah, I'll do it again and again and again. If you let me go today, I'd find another one and do it again." substance dealers and pushers kill, decapitate, and eat the fur. Ben then talked about the arrest in the garden, saying, "I went into the garden to get rid of the Fing arms." Ben also told Debbie that he had cooked Simon's head and ate his cheeks. Debbie expressed concern that the police might find blood under her fingernails, showing her complete lack of remorse for what they had done. During questioning, officers asked what happened to Simon's head. Only small fragments were ever found. Ben claimed he burned it in the garden and that the skull and teeth turned to ash, but this has been proven impossible. To this day, Simon's head is still missing, preventing him from having a proper burial. Ben asked his lawyer if admitting to eating Simon's head would help him avoid punishment, but of course it would not. The evidence against both of them was overwhelming. In court, Ben was found guilty of murder, tampering with justice, and preventing the burial of a corpse, receiving a life sentence with a minimum term of 19 years. Debbie was sentenced to 4 years in prison after being found guilty of tampering with justice, having already admitted to preventing the burial of a corpse. After the sentencing, Ben stated, "I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't under the influence. I wouldn't have cut him up. I was scared. I was traumatized. I was panicked. I was under extreme stress and also under the influence. What I did was truly awful. It's horrendous. And I deserve to be punished. I am sorry to his family and my family. It's hard for me to feel remorse for a man who was trying to kill me in my own house." Simon's son Wesley spoke after the sentencing, calling his father's killers evil. He said, "Your children should be ashamed of what you have done. You wrecked many more lives than just my dad's. No sentence will ever be enough for what you have done. There is nothing I can say that can truly express what you have made me feel. You knew what you were doing. No matter what others thought of him, he was my dad, loved beyond words and irreplaceable to me. I never liked the idea of my dad being involved with drugs, despite his struggles. He was my dad, and I was proud of him. I don't believe that Ben or Debbie are truly sorry for what they did to Simon. I think they saw him as an easy target to get more drugs, and when he didn't do what they wanted, they just killed him. It's tragic. Thank you for watching.